Just because you have an understanding of the Bible in your head doesn't necessarily mean that you have Jesus in your heart.
Get right, get inside, get hungry, got appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey.
You are listening to Chad Schaefer on Disputed Lands.
You're getting another one this week. All right, man. It says we're on air now. I'm hoping that we can see everybody. I'm watching the YouTube to see if it's playing.
Looks like the last one only went for like 13 seconds.
There we go. All right. We are live this time. Finally. All right. Well, I'm not going to do you guys.
Third time's a charm. You're going to nail it.
No, I'm not doing that again. You guys.
Yeah, Red.
You guys missed a whole lot. It's Monday night. It's Disputed Lands. We started off with technical difficulty. I guess that skit was just not meant to work.
Well, it was meant for two very special people.
It was meant for two. The audience is so much bigger tonight. We've got at least 3 more viewers: Jared, Tom, and Jared's mom.
Dude, I like this skit so much. I like this skit so much. I saw it twice.
Jared's grandma in what kind of pants? Something pants.
Jinkos.
Yeah, your grandma wears Jinkos.
Yeah,
your grandma wears Jinkos. Dude, Tom, that could not have gone. I've wanted to do this for so long. For those of you guys who don't know, I had the links in the previous description of the short one we did. We had technical difficulties through the Black YouTube. For those of you guys who don't know my guests, you've got to go watch their YouTube channel. They got phenomenal, deep material. Sometimes it's light, sometimes it's not. Sometimes they just sit and ramble. More Jared than anybody, but
it does happen.
It does happen, but it's one of my favorites. You may see my comments in there all the time trolling Jared, but they're filmmakers principally, and then they're commentators, and well, I'd say for the public world, but individually and on their own, their primary work is in helping people heal from, and I'll let them talk, but SRA, satanic ritual abuse, those people who have been abused in general, those who have been in some form or another messed with by the evil forces in this world, and these guys work through those issues with them. But I'll tell you how I first came about knowing these guys, and I'm going to let them talk and ramble here, but this is just a chill session, so we can do that. But I came to know these guys first long before I was ever introduced them by hearing them on Through the Bunker with Derek Gilbert, and he was talking about to Thomas Dunn and Jared Chrestman about this film called Detestable. I was like, man, this sounds interesting. I'm gonna listen to that one. So I was listening up, and I listened to these guys talk, and I thought, man, this is some deep, heavy stuff. This is the real deal right here. This is no holds barred, no punches pulled, in your face, dirty, down and dirty ministry that the church just doesn't deal with. And I shared with some of my testimony on your show, and I was like, so I knew where these guys were coming from. I know what you guys are dealing with, and I'm like, thank the Father these guys are out there, because that's not something just anybody can deal with, man. So Detestable. Now, here's my question. Welcome, Jared. Welcome, Tom.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Chad. Are we live now?
Yeah, we're live. Okay. Everything's working cool. So Here's my question. I'm kind of confused now. So I know you Detestable. And the last time we were on, Tom, we were talking about your new film that's going to be coming out called The Darkest of Red. And now I see that this latest documentary is called, here, I'll just share. I get this posted to my page here just this afternoon. It's called This Is War. So now I'm all confused, man. So is the Darkest of Red still happening, or has it just been renamed This Is War? I'm confused.
Thanks for asking me that question, Chad. The Darkest of Red is definitely still happening.
Okay.
But it takes a long
cool.
time
So
to make a movie, and it takes
Okay.
a lot of money to make a movie. So along the way, we're doing some other projects. So
Gotcha.
one of the reasons why we did it this way is if I'm spending money to go to California to do some interviews, I want to get as much, I want to maximize the money that's been trusted to me, as much as I can. So if I can, do interviews for multiple projects while I'm there, then I'm, what I'm saying? I'm being more productive. I'm just trying to be a good steward of what I have. So we were able to get more interviews done for this project than we were for the Darkest of Red. So that's why this one's kind of coming along. We're not really on a time frame with the Darkest of Red. It will be out sometime next year, but again, along the way, we made this film, and it just kind of happened. And that's not really right to say it just kind of happened, because once I look at this finished product, I know that God was just all over it and in it. And I mean, I interviewed 7 people that don't even know each other, and somehow they made a movie together to talk about one thing, and it all fit together. So
that's awesome. Jared, did you go out to California too?
Yeah, I flew out and met Tom in Los Angeles. I set up a few of the interviews that we did. One of them, I got to mark something off my bucket list. I was a big fan as a kid. People that watch the YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, kind of know that when I was a kid, I had a lot of crazy experiences supernaturally. But one of the books that I read at an early age that really kind of helped put me on a solid set of tracks as far as dealing with these things with the authority of Jesus was Johanna Michaelson's book, The Beautiful Side of Evil. And Greg Reed, friend of the show, he's on the show all the time. Turns out he's friends with Johanna Michelson. And so I told Greg one day, I was like, dude, you got to get me permission to talk to her on the phone. I've loved that woman forever. I was like, she's starting to get older. I've got to talk to her just to tell her that she means something to me. So Greg made it happen. I got permission. I got her phone number, the whole 9 yards. And I called her. And then when we found out we decided we were going to start doing this as a war, it turned into, we got to go meet her at her house and film her. And she's kind of been off the reservation for a while. I mean, there are a lot of people in our generation that just don't really know who she is. And so through Greg, by the grace of God, I mean, when you're in this ministry and you're dealing with this kind of stuff, there just aren't a whole lot of strangers you trust, or you even, really want to deal with, you don't want the potential hassles. So long story short, we got permission. And so I went all the way to Hollywood, really with a primary goal in mind to get to hang out with Johanna Michelson. And what we captured, I think, was just dynamite in a camera.
Dynamite in a camera. Well, I'm going to steal that, and I'm going to patent it so you can't say it again, and you'll have to pay me money. But anyway, so you guys, I mean, for real, you were talking about experiences growing up. Maybe, Jared, I don't know that story. What are you talking about experiences growing up? I mean,
man, I've told a few different stories. I don't remember.
But I don't know that I've heard them. I don't know that I pay attention a whole lot when I'm watching your show.
That's okay, dude. I totally get it. I don't pay a lot of attention when I'm on the show, and so it's
Jared, go ahead. I'd like to hear some of them.
Yeah, you never know what you're gonna get on Through the Black. But anyway, when I was a kid, man, I still don't really know why this was the way it was, but I had a lot of experiences with shadow people, in situations like that. I lived in a pretty woodsy area in Illinois. I remember having lots of experiences with shadow figures moving about the trees. I later on, I came to find out, I'm probably butchering my own story, I guess, but come to find out, later on in life and I definitely wasn't a rich kid, but there was a seminary campus that I lived on while my dad was doing his graduate work that was tucked away in one of the richest parts of Illinois. And so the more that I've learned, the more that I realize a lot of times where you have crazy excess amounts of cash, you also find the occult thriving, and that definitely was the area that I was in. So, I've learned a lot more about issues of shadow people and sleep paralysis and stuff like that. But I remember riding my bike being chased by shadowy figures in the woods that weren't real. They weren't real people. When you're 7 years old, that's somewhat traumatizing in a weird way, Yeah,
I can see that having an effect on someone's mental processes.
There was a lot of freedom, on this campus. It's a really safe area. So, I would ride my bike at night under a full moon, and you would be by yourself in different parts of campus. It's a large area. Around this time though, and I chalk this up to the providence of God, because I started asking questions and being on a seminary campus with a lot of good Christian people, there was advice that was asked of certain people, and the answer came back, not sure, but the name and authority of Jesus Christ is sufficient for any of the powers and principalities. And so at a young age, I learned to just rebuke first, ask questions later. And later on, I had a friend we were in the third grade. His sister had brought home a Ouija board, and he came from a non-practicing but very intense like Jewish family, a pretty hardcore Jewish family, very anti-Messiah. And long story short, I remember he started having lots of issues in his house where he had a figure moving up and down the hallway. Everybody in the house was having night terrors. Pictures were being flipped upside down on the wall, blah, 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 blah. The experiences that I had with shadow people, I had come very quickly to understand the name and authority of Jesus Christ was powerful. So we organized a sleepover where I'd come to his house and we'd just whip up on this thing in the name of Jesus. How does day, like, I look back and I don't remember I don't remember why exactly I was so confident in this area. I would just have to say it was the presence and interaction of the Holy Spirit at a young age. It just knew that the name and authority of Jesus Christ was powerful and that nothing in my friend's house was able to hurt him as long as we had Jesus.
How old were you?
I was 9, third grade, whatever a third grader is. I think 8 or 9 years old. Something like that, maybe younger. What, 7? I don't know. I don't remember what year it was.
7 is second. 8 is usually third.
Yeah, what is 8 then? It was about 8. It was third grade. It was definitely third grade. Yeah. So anyway,
just look at your fingers, Jared. When you hold them up, it's like I'm 7 is second grade. I'm 8 is third grade.
The thing was, I was always the youngest in my grade. I was always the youngest in my grade, so I don't ever remember because I was usually a year behind as far as my age.
Math, not the strongest subject. You're probably more of a word guy.
But I tell you what happened was, I remember it was a very distinct story where we ended up finding this Ouija board in the house, and we prayed over it, and things got a lot worse in that house that night. Things really got bad, and I remember my friend, he actually tried to burn that Ouija board in his fireplace. He didn't have a lot of supervision, so it wasn't hard for him to. It wasn't hard for him to start a fire downstairs, and he lived in a big house in Chicago. This was a nice area. His mom was a prominent author for she wrote books and stuff up there. To this day, I've been trying to figure out what she wrote, and I still haven't been able to. But long story short, he tried to burn this Ouija board, and it wouldn't burn. And this wasn't a Hasbro Ouija board. This was a handcrafted mahogany Ouija board that had special love and care. Have no idea where his sister got it. His sister was much older. She was 13 or 14 years old. He tried to burn it. It wouldn't burn. I remember that night he had some of the most intense dreams where he was threatened that the devil showed up in his dreams, so to speak, and said, if you ever try something like that again, I'll kill you and I'll kill the rest of your family. And I remember I got a phone call at my house where he was freaking out saying, nobody believes me. My mom doesn't believe me. What do I do? It's going to hurt my family. And I felt like this righteous fury inside me where I said, just lay hands on that board and just ask Jesus to fix it, and didn't have anything special, nothing articulate. And I remember he laid his hands on that board. He prayed over it, asked for Jesus' help, and he went and threw it back in that fireplace, and it burned. It went up like kindling. And at that point, everything in that house went away as far as those problems, and he made a profession of faith. I don't know if he really had faith or not, but he made a profession of faith. And those were experiences that I had at a young age. That's a very minute, that's one particular instance. But my childhood was full of weird things like that just kind of led us to you know, being able to have crazy conversations with people, you know, saying, listen, I believe what you're saying. Trust me, you don't know me, but I believe you. Let's talk about it, you know?
Right. Tom, did you ever have any of those kind of experiences growing up?
You know, as Jared was blabbering on there, it made me think of a few stories. But
you know, the only sad thing about doing this show with
the only
sad thing about doing this.
Where I remember having this horrific dream. It was more than a dream. It was more than a dream, and it was something pure wicked, pure evil in my dream, just having control over me. And I would even say that it was maybe even sleep paralysis. So I was so young, but I remember when I woke up out of this, being so afraid to go back to sleep. And this took place at an aunt's house. And I didn't put, two and two together till years later. I'm like, why did I have that horrible dream in that place, But I didn't realize till years later that there were doors opening up in that home,
Right.
Or I didn't understand about how that worked. But, hindsight's 2020. So I had a lot of experiences like that, and I've talked before about my mom. She dabbled in the occult and the tarot cards and stuff like that. And this was just a few years before I understood my authority. Maybe I would have been in second grade in that apartment. And, there was something in the room that would, I would yell for my mom because the closet door would keep coming open, right? And she would come in the room. She's like, what's wrong with you? And then she would shut the door. And then I said, put the clothes hamper in front of the door, right? So it won't open. And so she did that. And then the door opened again. And then I just rolled over and covered myself from head to toe. But that created an anxiety in me that followed me all the way through my 20s, actually into my 30s. I really didn't get rid of that fear until I started doing Russ Disdar's teaching, because before that, I didn't really understand the authority. I understood I plead the blood of Jesus Christ, right? But I did it shaking with fear. I didn't do it with confidence. I didn't do it understanding I had the authority. I didn't do it understanding that I could trample on snakes and scorpions, right? So when I started doing Russ's teaching is when it's been 12 years ago. I could actually go to sleep at night without being afraid.
Yeah. Growing up, I had episodes of sleep paralysis, and I can remember times of talking with my aunt in particular. I was really close with my aunt. She lived in Illinois. She was just a very spiritual woman. All my aunts and uncles, for the most part, on my mom's side were, Bible believing people. But she was one that I just really connected with. And I can remember her and I talking one time, and I had told her, about I was having these problems of sleep paralysis. There wasn't no discernible demonic activity that I could tell you about, other than I had issues where I would be awake and I could not get my body to move. I couldn't move my arms. I couldn't move my hands. It was just really scary. And it happened frequently where I would be that way, where I would be awake and wanting to sit up, wanting to talk, and I couldn't. And I don't know how much time would pass. It's hard to tell, when you were in that state, but it would seem like it took forever before I could finally get my mind to overcome whatever it was. And so I remember talking to my aunt one time, and she goes, that's not good. That's not good activity. That's not normal. It shouldn't be that way. And I don't know how the conversation ended up there, but she said, she talked to me. She says, I've seen shadow people, but she called them imps. She says, I see little shadows all the time trying to get into my house and around my kids. She says, I see this all the time. And I rebuke them constantly because they're constantly trying to attack, my family. She says, but I rebuke them all the time. So I had a very strong aunt who was spiritually discerning, and she's in a little bit of town where none of this spiritual warfare or anything was ever really taught at their church. I mean, their ministers were a line of guys that would drone on for 50 minutes and you'd leave wondering what you ever heard. I mean, you know, so she was just very strong, one I could talk to. And then I shared with you guys that the incident, my testimony on your show. So if anybody has ever wanted to hear my testimony in detail, you can go to that episode where Jared and Tom were gracious enough to have me on to talk about my book. And in the middle of that, I give my testimony. And it's actually, you know, I became familiar with you guys, man, because of that film. I discuss all that. But I just want to say here live for everybody, you know, anybody who's watched Through the Black, all 5 of you who watch that show on YouTube.
6. We had a new subscriber yesterday. 6 people.
I trolled Jared pretty hard in there, and Tom somewhat too. But I just want to tell you guys, just because I felt like a few of the guests that I have on here, I've felt just such a connection with these guys. First of all, because Tom and I are almost exactly the same age. Number one,
separated at birth.
Separated at birth, man. We both grew up in the Midwest, so we know what the trailer park 80s rock was all about. I mean,
I didn't realize you guys were the same age. That actually, Chad, that actually makes me kind of sad because I'm worried about losing you both now. I don't want to lose you both at the same time as you get old.
Yeah, I know. We'll both croak long before you, and Jared just has always just felt like my little brother. You know, he's absolutely brilliant, folks. Jared is he's brilliant. I'm not saying Tom isn't. They just have their different gifts, and they work well together. But you know, so anyway, I'm just saying that because I want you guys to both know, and I want it to be live and on record, how much I just love and appreciate you guys. As much as I troll you on your show and everything in your comments, it's just,
well, Chad, we kind of like you too. So
you guys are just great. So upcoming, you know, are you going to be dropping this film? Then This Is War at Take on the World. That's a little over a month away now. It's just
we will be there. We will have that film there, and we will.
Will we get to view it there?
What's that?
Will there be an opportunity to view it there anytime?
No, we're not going to view it, but I'm going to talk about it in my talk. So okay. I'm going to show some. I'm going to show some clips from it. But I believe we're doing a viewing in Lima, Ohio, but we haven't set a date up for that. But
that would be pretty cool.
Take on the World is so jam packed with activities going on.
Man almighty!
We would have to stay up till 3 a.m. to watch the movie.
Well, you will be. You will be anyway. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, I know. So especially with who
I'm praying for Chris and Liz every day, many times a day. And you know, it was like 2 months ago, and it was like this packed, and they keep adding speakers and guests and things that people can do. I'm like, man, these guys are going to be just like, we're going to have to wheel them out of there when the thing's over. What are you talking about, Jared?
That's a really good question. Like, I'm going to give.
You might want to start thinking about that.
I've given a significant amount of thought, but making it like come to like fruition is difficult because of the way my brain works. So, I've given a presentation in the past on missing children statistics, and I tie sort of like I make a case. I'm kind of talking to people that think it's really not possible to have ritual human sacrifice in the United States anymore. I'm kind of making a case that, yeah, it's absolutely possible. And when you look at biblical history and biblical studies, it's always been there. And when you look at just historical research, it's been in every culture. So to say that it somehow just randomly disappeared all of a sudden in the last couple hundred years in the United States is ridiculous. And so I kind of make that case, right? And then I bring up ultimately how many kids go missing every year, and I just ask questions. Like I don't make any I don't make any like, you know, I don't make a glaring assessment. You know, there are a lot of really screwy things in the numbers that don't really add up, you know,
Well,
and so
what
it
about
kind of leads you to wonder.
About a year or so ago, maybe it's longer now, I'm losing more track of time as I get older. But do you remember that stuff that was going around about all that stuff happening in the North, particularly as the Northwest, about missing people? Who's missing people in the Northwest?
Dude,
what do you?
Yeah,
is that happening
everywhere? It's happening everywhere. There's so many people who go missing every year that never come back. It's not just the Northwest; it's everywhere.
Well, they're having a problem up in the Northwest with finding feet.
Finding what? A whole Bigfoot?
No, feet.
No, little foot, little feet, Dad, little human feet. They're just
little feet.
Yeah, they've been separated from their owner, and they're sad. They're just sitting there. People find them, and they wonder where they came from.
Hold on, I know we're laughing about this, but I'm
They're
kind of disturbed.
20 feet.
How far?
20 feet. No, not 20 feet. 20 feet, not a distance, but the amount of foot.
I just want you to speak clearly.
Yeah. So I'm talking about foot. I'm talking about a foot.
See, I just want people to understand this is the Through the Black specialty. We can take a really dark and twisted subject and laugh about it live on the air, but in a way that's still kind of like, you know, not this, you know, it's not doing a disservice to the subject.
So I hadn't heard about this. What do you mean they found 20 feet?
They're floating up in Washington State and up in Vancouver, British Columbia, that area, the West Coast up there. And yeah, look it up. I don't know how many they found. Maybe I'll look it up right now. Feet found up in the Northwest.
So do you think this is the work of individuals? Do you think this is a work of a cult up there?
Can we get weird for a second? Can we get weird, Chad? Are we allowed to get weird on your show?
It is a disputed lands, and it can't get any more dispute. I mean, this is everything goes. So
I have
disclaimer. Let me get the disclaimer. I was supposed to do this up front. The guests and views of our guests, the views and their comments may not be those of NYSTV. We do not hold ourselves responsible for the claims made by guests who may appear on the show. It is for educational purposes only. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, well, hey, let me just read this headline. It doesn't give a number, but then you can go ahead, Jared. It says, severed feet still inside shoes keep mysteriously washing up on Pacific Northwest shores. That's in the Washington Post. So you know it's not fake news. Go ahead, Jared. Your turn.
Okay. So now that you read the disclaimer that Tom and I say we're going to read every time we have a guest, but fail to because we're really irresponsible. I'm glad you covered your bases for liability purposes. Here's the deal. Okay. So number one, when you try to isolate the numbers, both on adults and children, as to like ultimately when I first started doing the research, I wanted to know beyond a shadow of a doubt how many kids go missing every year that never come home. That's all I wanted to know, you know, because when you look at the numbers that are given to us by like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and, you know, in conjunction with the numbers from the FBI where missing kids are reported, you get like these massive numbers of like 700,000 kids a year going missing. And obviously if 700,000 kids were 600,000 to 700,000 kids were going missing every year or whatever, and they weren't coming home, that would be a much bigger story. So you kind of try to break the numbers down. Every time a child's reported missing, even if it's a typical runaway, that number gets logged into the system. So if a kid runs away 20 times in a year because he's mad at his parents and he gets reported missing, they're going to add 20 to that number. So it's not a good indicator of how many kids go missing that never come home, right? So that's what I tried to figure out. And it got very difficult. And you find that it's a very convoluted system. And it's almost like the system is engineered to keep you from knowing how many kids actually go missing that never come home again. They almost make it sound like it's really not that big of a deal. I think that, you know, even adults, you factor in adults to those numbers too, it gets even freakier when you're dealing with kids and adults. Long story short, honestly, Chad, I don't know exactly what's happening. I do not know what's happening. I do think that it's possible in some weird circumstances that some of these people are kidnapped. I think Some of them are sacrificed. And, I got into this weird phase for a while when I was studying the Nephilim and underground military bases. There were stories that came out of Vietnam of UFOs that crashed that were full of body parts, right? And that always stuck with me. It was really bizarre because the thought process was behind people that were on site was that they were being used as food. And they weren't feeding other humans in those parts of Vietnam. So it got really weird for me when I was studying, like, some of the UFO history in some different parts of the world, because there were lots of reports of UFOs that were downed that, and these were actually, they seemed to be man-made, that were actually full of like legs and arms and stuff. So I don't know. I know that sounds really crazy, but I think it's possible that if we're living in a world that still contains Nephilim hybrids, I honestly think some of these people that go missing are a food source in some of these underground cities. It's not even up for debate to me anymore as to these deep underground military bases that we have. The question is just what are we populating them with? So, how big are they? How connected are they? It's been an interesting topic to me for a long time.
So let me ask you this: Would you go on a hike up there?
I would go on a hike in some places, but like in Canada, you've got places called like the Valley of Headless Men, right? Where you get into issues of like the mountain giants, right? Where you've got people that just show up. They still find their body and they find their head, but they're separated about 20 feet, and the head wasn't cut; it was pulled, right? That freaked me out because there are also stories from the 70s in some of these same places of people that they referred to actually having seen 30-footers, 20 to 30-footers in the woods, way, way out in the boonies. We're talking about hunters that are taking a compound bow, or a deer rifle that are going out 15 miles into the woods looking for an elk or something, that are doing this over a period of 2 weeks. So some of the stories that come back out are really interesting. There are stories of hunters from the 70s up in those parts that actually talked about having witnessed 20-foot giants removing boulders from the side of a hill that you wouldn't think could be moved, that they were actually operating inside of a cavernous system. The boulder itself was like a plug for the hole. It was the entrance. And they were able to move these rocks like they were nothing. And if you or I passed them, we wouldn't think anything about it because it's just a giant rock that no one can move. But there are lots of these crazy reports. I honestly don't know what to do with all the information. I can't vet every ounce of it. But when you deal with this many people that are going missing, this number of people that you're finding dismembered, there's something really weird happening, dude. So I tend to look for, what kind of weird explanations explain this? Did a person trip and then just fall into pieces? No. When you're finding these people in like random obscure places in Canada, they've been pulled apart. Well, what pulled them apart? It wasn't, if you were just some psycho out there and you wanted to kill somebody, you don't have the strength to rip their arms and their head off, and just leave them. It's just, there's some weird things going on in this world that nobody talks about.
Except for Disputed Lands and Through the Black.
That's right.
Right. Tom, what do you think of that?
I wasn't paying attention to a word he said, dude. I thought we were talking about feet, and then he started going off about his stuff. So right. I don't know, dude. I mean, I did hear a few of the things in the beginning, and if you do make it to Take on the World, I would go see Jared's thing if you don't have anything better to do. It'll probably be pretty good.
So I heard your talk last year, and I reminded people we're getting new people to this show all the time. So I'll just say, last year Tom comes in and his stuff is all it's Apple. It's not Microsoft, which is what the equipment was all running on basically there at the conference. And he comes in. I expect him to bring his laptop and be all prepared. He's got basically what he has on, only he dressed up. He put a tie on over it, his shirts. So he dressed up, but just as he is. And I expect him to come in bringing his laptop. And he goes, I'm looking, I'm like, oh, cool. He's getting ready to do his presentation. He's like, so where is it? He's like, oh, I've got it on my watch. It's all on my phone.
Yeah, how'd that work out?
I'm like,
how'd that work out for everybody?
Hey, dude, I blame Chris and Liz Bailey.
Well, so anyway, short story shorter is it didn't work. And man, my heart was breaking. We spent like 30 minutes, I think, trying to get this compatibility issue to work out so that it'd work on my computer and everything. But here's the point I'm getting to. Tom went off his heart and memory, and his talk, out of all the talks that I was able to get an opportunity to listen to, because I couldn't listen to everybody since I was speaking, and trying to interact with people myself, but his has stuck with me. I remember his testimony. I remember what he talked about and what he said. So what I'm saying is, folks, the price of admission is going to be worth it just for these two guys alone. I mean, you know, you got people who have found, you know, this area of research, study, thought through you guys. And for some people, that's what it takes. I mean, not everybody comes up through the church. I remember, you know, growing up thinking, you know, there were times I was very sheltered, guys. I was very sheltered from a lot of stuff. Even though my life was hard, I come up in a poor house as well. I mean, there were times where we didn't know where we were going to get food the next week as well. You know, that kind of thing. My clothes that I wore were hand-me-downs from my older brother. I never had new clothes. So, you know, but it was still home. My dad was still there. My mom was still there. But they sheltered me from a lot of things, because when I wasn't in school, I was with my dad. He had horses, standardbreds that he did harness horse racing, right? I don't know if you guys ever did that. So when I wasn't doing that, playing ball, I was with my dad down at the horses. So I wasn't out and about. I didn't go to a lot of public events other than the fairs, state fairs that we went to. And then even then, you know, I saw things and I saw people, of course, and everything, but we never really, my parents didn't go to parties. They didn't go to concerts. They didn't go to civil organized events, I would say, community organized events. They did none of that. So I was very sheltered from a lot of that went on. I thought everybody grew up the way I did. And so as I started, of course, had that blown as I started to get older in middle school and high school, and I started to realize not everybody is brought up going to church and everything. I had kind of a difficult time dealing with people who were outside of that, of the church, who were not raised as I did, who didn't see things the way I did. And it took me a little bit of time to adjust to that. But once I did, it's still these things of the occult things. I thought those were stuff that they just did in movies. It was just the extreme rare individual.
Sorry.
You know what I'm saying? What are you laughing at?
Oh, the chat room. Someone's trying to start a fight.
Somebody's asking a question for me. I want to answer it.
Okay.
I think the answer would be the same across the board, no matter what.
So maybe here's not the place, but you know, you just say the word, Chief.
Tulip. Say it with your two lips, Jared. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, that's so. Keep going, Chad. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh at your story. It was.
Oh yeah, right. You know, whatever. I know
sad.
there's some payback. I know there's some payback coming. People didn't get to see Tom's headgear to start the show the first time we tried to start this. They didn't get to see my little skit, so that's perfectly okay.
Yeah, I don't even know what you're talking about.
So
I saw it twice. I liked it so much the first time. I came back for seconds.
So what I'm trying to say is that even though I had some experiences that I shared with you, I was really sheltered from the kind of the evil that was out there, the true evil that was out there. I can remember, though, Jared, my first real experience with understanding just how sick people were. I was probably 12 or 13. And I remember sitting there, I would sit there and watch Sunday afternoon TV with my mom. And Jared, it wasn't like what you had growing up. We had 4 channels in one fuzzy one, right? You had 6, you had channel 6, channel 8, channel 13, and you had the public broadcasting 20 and channels 20.
Was that back
20
in the day
and 40?
when you had to manually turn the channel from the television,
right.
walk up to the TV?
Right. So you had public broadcasting that was on channels 20 and 40. 40 came in clear. 20
I had
fuzzy.
to use a pair of pliers because we tore ours off.
The knob fell off within a year, right? Well, also, I was still young enough. My first TV, I got TV channel 59 was brand new. Fox News was branding. I saw that come onto the market, Jared. So that's how old I am.
Fox had
Anyway.
a day it started. I thought, wow.
Yeah, Fox. I saw Fox when they first came out, and they played just old reruns, old 40s and 50s reruns. Anyway, so what I was sitting there, and I remember watching my show. My mom says, she didn't say anything. She just put the show on because she liked watching the deep Sunday afternoon slow movies, and it was Adam. You guys saw that movie, right?
I saw that movie.
Adam.
The Adam
real
Walsh
famous.
movie? Is that what you're talking about?
Adam Walsh. Yeah.
Mhm.
The Adam Walsh case.
Yeah.
You've never seen that, Jared?
Oh, was that the
Watch-
one where that missing kid show was based on that kid, Adam? His dad started it?
Yeah. Right.
I know the story, but I never saw the movie. What was it?
Okay. It's the story. It's the story of his going missing and that family's experience with it. Him going missing. It was heartbreaking. I remember seeing that, and that is when I was like, that's when the first time I was like really kind of scared, even though I was 12 or 13, I was like, that there are people out there that do this. That's kind of like when my reality started getting shaken about the kind of evil that's in this world. And people had, you think about that going on. Tom, when we were growing up, did you ever hear about anybody in ministry? I mean, I don't know when you really started actively attending church, but did you ever hear anybody outside of law enforcement that addressed these things from a spiritual perspective, from the church side, that weren't made out to be kooks?
You talking about missing kids, or you talking about?
I'm talking about anybody who ministered in this kind of area to families, to satanic ritual abuse. When we were growing up, did you ever hear of anybody in the church that wasn't made out to be crazy?
Just Geraldo.
Yeah, I wouldn't call that really from the church perspective.
So no, not really. I mean, when I was in my late teens, there was this guy, and he's kind of infamous now, but I think back in the day when he got started, he was pretty legit, at least from what I can tell. He kind of got a little crazy, or the more he went on. But Bob Larson had a really bold radio show back in the day where he would confront these people, and these people would attack him, and he exposed a lot of this stuff back then. But there wasn't much of it going on, And the thing is, when I was coming up in junior high, and even before that, in grade school, is when I was first made aware of this. Okay, I was born in 1973, and fourth grade was when I first became aware of the reality of satanic cults, and I heard about it through my family. Just kind of, hanging out and overhearing the adults talking about stuff.
Well, that's when so that was about the time that really, you're talking about the same age here. That's when I think Adam was first released. Mm-hmm. And that was really the beginning of when the satanic panic stuff started getting really hyped out there, where they were just making a mockery. Because from time, talking about 77, 78, 79, really going into there in that area is when it really, I think, I'm just going from memory, is when it really just started to pick up as far as events happening. I can remember just not far from here, it's still unsolved today, a little bitty town. Not far from here, there was a girl, she was, can't remember if she was older than me or younger than me, who went missing, and they never did figure out what happened to her. But I just remember I used to have a roaming range around my house that was a mile, or within my mom's whistle. My mom's got a whistle on her like nobody's business. So as long as I was within range where I could hear my mom's whistle, that was my stomping grounds. And I remember as we got older, that area I was allowed to wander got closer and closer to the house. It used to be I could go out to the woods, I could walk down the tracks, I could do this and I could do that. And it started to get to be, don't leave the yard. As I got older, of course, fortunately, I was older, but I can remember that happening. So, I mean, it's not like it's been this slow boil kind of thing that we've talked about, how it seems like it's just like every year it's like at another level and another level. I mean, think about the topics you guys have talked about in the last year, in the last year since you guys have YouTube channels come online, and everything that's happened in the last year. And you can't even keep up with it anymore. I mean, and it seems the sad thing is like every day now. I don't know about you guys, but it's almost like it's the expectation now that I'm going to wake up and I'm going to hear some new thing that's going to be crazy. I mean, do you feel the same way? That it's almost like an expectation now that you're going to wake up and something weird is going to be in the news, or something that just seems.
I think I'm always waiting for the next shoe to drop. In the last 10 years, I think we've seen confirmation after confirmation after confirmation of satanic ritual abuse. I remember a little over 10 years ago. I guess it would have been 2008. That's when I first learned about Bohemian Grove, and I'm like, what's going on with this? And I would love to, interview people and find out, where were you? What were you doing when you found out there was a place in California where, these elite businessmen and politicians sneak out to the woods, and it's no cameras allowed, and they go in there and they have this mock human sacrifice ritual. So I'm waiting for the next shoe to drop. I can't believe that it just seems like more and more things are coming out. A couple of years ago, one of the big things that dropped was the Hampstead case. Okay. This case over in Europe that completely confirmed everything we've been screaming about and everything that we've been saying. So, and then, I mean, that's not the only one, but that's a big one. That's one of the biggest ones that we've seen. And they've done their best. The media done their best to try to cover it up and to make it look like it was nothing and that it was more satanic panic. But I'm sorry, that's just not the case. So I think I agree with you, Chad, that I'm just kind of like, okay, what's going to happen next? We're seeing stuff constantly. We could talk about things like Pizzagate. We could talk about,
let me ask you this, guys, and you may have answered this, but I've wanted to ask you. So since we're on Disputed Lands, do you think, what do you think? I guess I'll just ask it this way. Jared, you can answer first, I guess. What do you think of Trump? Are they really going after people? Is it just a show?
Tom and I have back and forth on this all the time, like on our cell phone, because both of us really want to like Trump. Both of us.
I want to like him too.
Both of us really.
Well, let me put it this way. I want to believe that he is actually doing something to try to.
Me too. I want to believe that too. And Tom and I think. I mean, I'm not going to speak for Tom, but with the conversations I've had with Tom, it's been like we've been of the same mind, where it's like, okay, it's such a dividing issue, right? We get so many emails. If we say anything nice about Trump whatsoever, people are like, he's just a demonic shill, blah, 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 blah. You guys are fools. And it's like, okay, I get it. You're welcome to your opinion. I get it. New World Order, Illuminati, whatever. Okay, fine. You're welcome to that. I see the thing is with Trump, I don't see anything obviously glaring that I can vet and say, okay, I know for a fact that he's he's a New World Order shill, right? I can't say that. I mean,
here's the thing. He's made so much money and he's rubbed elbows with so many very powerful people. You can't. I mean, you would have to be ignorant to. I mean, you would just have to be really naive to think that he has not been asked to join, prompted, or not aware of the elite who do participate in these things if he isn't himself.
Yeah,
would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, you have to be somewhat aware of what's happening in and around you. I would think for that to be a possibility, but I'm also aware of the fact that there are a lot of times I think. And when I say this, people need to understand where I'm coming from, because I'm playing devil's advocate here in a way because I just don't know for sure. Anytime Tom and I are dealing with a situation, let's scrap the upper echelon elites from this conversation for just a second. When we're dealing with somebody that's making really grandiose claims about the type of abuse and who their abusers are, we always have to sit back and say, okay, if this is true, there's going to be evidence to the fact that this is true, right? And a lot of times you'll find that when you start digging into the meat of a satanic ritual abuse case, sometimes the claims that are made initially are based in a root of truth, but they don't, the sensational aspects of it don't always hold true, right? So you, like, a lot of times when I'm dealing with somebody that's saying, okay, I was molested, but I was molested by John McCain when I was 12 years old in Vietnam. You're like, okay, let's just back up. You start to pick up indicators that, yes, this person was sexually abused. Was it by John McCain? There has to be evidence for that before you can believe the story. A lot of times with these fractured personalities and stuff, real abuse can occur, but a lot of other damage can happen, and some of the aspects of the stories can be fabricated. So what I'm saying is, not every instance of any story involving satanic ritual abuse, or even stories of the Illuminati and people that are coming out and talking about it, there can be a root there, but the sensational aspects that people like to hype on aren't always necessarily the truthful ones. And the fact of the matter is, 99.9% of the people that are talking about the New World Order and the Illuminati don't know anybody in it and haven't been a part of it. You know what I'm saying? So we're all experts in some areas where we shouldn't all be experts. And so my point is, I do think it's possible. I think it's possible. I don't think it's probable, but I think it's possible to be inside of a system somehow, especially by the providence of God, if Trump is somehow a decent guy. And I'm not saying he is. It wouldn't surprise me to find out the latter, right? It wouldn't surprise me to find out he's a shill. But I'm saying it is possible for God to put people in positions of authority where he can use them later on as sort of a trump card, no pun intended, right? No pun intended on that one.
Oh my goodness.
But my point is, it is possible for God to put people in places to use them for specific purposes in his own, in his own divine, forbearance and stuff. So I want to believe that Trump is a good dude and that he's actually waging war on pedophiles. I want to believe that. If I found out tomorrow that he was a complete shill and he's part of the entire system, it's not going to surprise me. And I'm not, I'm not on the limb one way or the other. Like, I'm always waiting and watching to see if there's evidence that corroborates one or the other. I have no idea.
People get too emotionally involved when it comes to politics, and they get so connected, just kind of like they do in sports, right? So they can pick out a candidate that they like, and this happens all the time, and if somebody finds out, if information comes out about that candidate, that this person is a horrible person, or they've done some kind of a bad deal, or they're corrupt in some way, they are so connected to that person that they take that personally if you expose them, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, if the president does something right, or if he does something wrong, I like the things that I agree with. I don't like the things that I disagree with. I don't think that he has any connection to Russians, and I don't think he's a racist. I can say those two things for sure.
Here's the simple facts. If you take away the emotions out of it, the simple fact is, under his presidency, for the short term of it, is the fact of the matter is there have been more arrests of sexual predators than there has in previous years. That's the bare bones fact of it.
Like a massive increase,
a massive increase. My question is that as a result of what he's done and his administration and the emphasis, or is it just because these programs are bearing results that have been around for, just happens to be bearing results now?
I would have to. I think it's him. I really do. I really think that Trump is behind a lot of the initiative to go after some of these guys. Listen, when you look at the number of people that have turned on him, how the entire, literally almost the entire liberal world has turned on him in such a way that it's it's so upside down, and the hatred is so vitriolic, when it comes to just the name Trump, where you got people coming up to kids eating a burger that are taking their hats from them, and
well, I got two things with that, Jared. So here's the first part of this. When it comes to the terminology Illuminati, I first heard that term back in the 90s. I can't remember. I read a book or saw it somewhere the first time. It was about Freemasons and Illuminati in the Federal Reserve. I first read that back in the 90s, and I have to be honest. When I kind of read that stuff, I mean, part of that I saw, but I wasn't mentally, where I am today, mature enough to handle the information that I was getting, and I kind of chucked it off. But I mean, if you look around today, thanks to social media and stuff like that, you have the knowledge of Illuminati is almost like it's almost a caricature now. It's almost like it's not even taken for real now. So my question, first part of this is it planned by the secret societies that it would become that way, like they did with the UFOs, that they couldn't hide it, so might as well make it something like a game that nobody ever pays attention to maintain that level of cover? Or was it a response because they were in fact starting to be really and truthfully exposed, and so that was part of it? So that's the first part of it, and then I'm going to get to my second part. I've always thought, now I can't prove this by scripture or anything else. Perhaps you could, and take a long, maybe some long laying out your case in a thesis in a 600-page book, but maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. I would have to look at it and see what the evidence of scripture said and the research said. But my feeling has always been that whoever this or the one. So here's where I'm going with this. And more than not likely that whoever this Antichrist person turns out to be, the Antichrist that the scripture was talking about, will in fact expose many, many dark things in the government. In fact, maybe to the point of the destruction comes from within, in that whoever this person happens to be massively exposes many, many very powerful people, not just in the U.S. government, but in government simultaneously throughout the earth, with some of the deeds are up, so that it actually threatens the societies and the governments because of the amount of stuff that is exposed by this, which allows this person to be a person who will take control, who the people want to trust. Because what did they do? I mean, they not only exposed these people, but they provided truth, proof, tapes, whatever. So, I mean, those two I know I threw a lot out there, but what do you think of that? I mean, is that legit, or am I talking crazy?
No, I mean, I've got the same questions. Number one, I sit back and I look, what is this fascination with the Illuminati? It's a pop culture version now,
You're right. It is pop culture, but was that planned, or is that just a response to the exposure?
Well, here's an interesting side to that. Back in the 80s and 90s, you started seeing gangs like the Bloods and the Crips and stuff. They started doing graffiti, started incorporating some of these pyramids and stuff. And the question some people had is, who are teaching gangs in inner cities Gnosticism? Number one, that was the question. That was a really weird question that people had. I've listened to people talk about that. It's almost like, I've got a couple thoughts on it. Number one, I think that it's completely possible, and I think it's been proven, that secret societies can be perpetuated through spiritual interaction with people that can span generations. You can have gaps in generations where secret societies seem to die and suddenly they're reborn. Why? Because the roots of which are not necessarily within, it's not men perpetuating the secret society. This is something that is above us necessarily. We're in a spiritual war, right? This is a war.
Okay. And
ultimately, a lot of these secret societies are governed by powers and principalities. When the nations were divided according to the number of the sons of God in Deuteronomy 32, what do you find? You find, okay, well, obviously you had powers and principalities established, right, that you and I don't necessarily have control. We don't get to just say you don't have authority over here anymore. We get to wage war in the name of Jesus Christ, and we can take back territory, like when Jesus sent out the 70. There are aspects of warfare and reclaiming territory that can be had, but what we need to understand is there are real powers and principalities that are still in charge of different areas. and they are, localized to territorial regions.
I might rephrase that for you. They have authority to operate in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. So when you look at issues of like, say, issues of like Illuminati stuff, what's interesting is there always seems to be this like Gnostic root of some form of spiritism. And I think that a lot of times what you see is people being subjected to spiritual forces that definitely aren't of Christ, right? And I think a lot of times some of this stuff comes by way of revelation to them, and I see it perpetuated in that way. It doesn't have to be information given from men to men. But on the other side, I think that you have this nature inside, of men that definitely like seem to gravitate towards evil, and so what happens is it gets picked up. And at the same time, if it starts to become glamorized or starts to become a part of the culture, I mean, you have a lot of people that pick up on the idea or the theme of it, and it takes on a life of its own. So, for instance, with the Illuminati stuff in pop culture, I don't necessarily think that's just like, I think that's kind of a byproduct of the spiritual condition that we're in, and it's evidence of a darker reality within the United States that doesn't necessarily have to do with just it being MTV's fault or some sort of psyop in bringing this to the minds of people, although that could be part of the problem too. So I think it could be all of the above at the same time. I think there's a lot going on, and it's not a simple answer.
Yeah, that it feeds. It's not a simple answer, but and we know that there are people that evil will just simply feed on itself to perpetuate, decay. I use this analogy, right? When a tree is alive, it may get some moss and stuff that grows on it, but as soon as that tree dies, and lays on the ground, then its decay just quickly comes about. That tree will immediately begin drawing other nasties to it, right? In its creation to find, cover, eat it. You'll find more nasty bugs by it, So I've always thought of that analogy. When the living thing goes, then nasties tend to gather and keep gathering strength. CB in the Now You See TV chat. I don't know. I don't think you guys are in that. Oh yeah, you are. So CB, Jared is anyway. Are you in there, Tom? But CB posted this in 2016 under Obama. There are 1,952 arrests of sexual predators. In 2017 under Trump, that number grew to 6,355. So there's not only a little difference, there was a marked difference. Difference.
And just look at who we're dealing with. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Obama was married to a transsexual. I mean, that I always refer to Michelle as Michael. I don't think that's really not.
He did, and he did too.
He did too. Yeah, And so you look at the weird WikiLeaks, emails and stuff. I mean, a lot of these people. I mean, there seems to be a paperwork trail that links a lot of these people that were supposed to be at the top, bringing people and making these arrests, that actually seem to be part of the problem. I mean, it's a freaky world, dude.
What do you think? I mean, are we on the right track, Tom, or did we lose you again?
Huh?
I feel like I have to directly address you if I'm going to get you interested in the show tonight.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. I've always been a political atheist. Not always, but for the last 10 years I have been. And is that somebody's phone?
That's just my computer going off.
Okay.
I can't silence it. I'm sorry.
The last election was the first election that I voted in. So I agree with what Jared was saying earlier. I'm not going to be surprised. I'm not going to have my feelings hurt because I'm not that deeply invested, with this. I'm just glad that we bought a little bit more time, with avoiding the bullet of Hillary Clinton. But I think that if we're not careful, we're going to be distracted and we're going to be missing a bigger bullet coming down the road, which is the technocracy and all of the stuff that's developing while we feel like we're winning. Okay. While we feel like everything's going good, we're going to get another We're going to get another pro-life justice in there, and that's great. I'm glad, man, and I hope they get rid of abortion. It shouldn't, it shouldn't be in there. That would be amazing. But as we feel like we're winning, or as we do win, there's always going to be, something else that we don't see. So I don't want to sound, like a pessimist. I'm not, but I just think we need to be prepared. Regardless of what happens. I mean, there's been some historic things happening, like the whole the North Korea thing, and even today there was a meeting that was historic. So
I was out of the loop. I didn't see any news today. What was the historic thing today?
Well, just the summit with Putin and what happened there, and Putin calling out George Soros, which I thought was pretty awesome.
Oh,
so,
he did? He called out Soros?
Yeah, he said, I just saw the headlines. He called for him to be arrested because he's meddling in elections all over the world. So
interesting.
Yeah.
It is interesting. At the same time, it's one of those deals where you're sitting back, like when Trump's calling out North Korea on Twitter, and the next thing you know, we're moving into possible peace agreements, nuclear. It's just like, is the Matrix pranking us? Is this real? Or is the Matrix pranking us right now? Is Donald Trump solving a nuclear crisis via Twitter? That's when I just tap out. I don't know what's going on. Like, this is so weird.
Dude,
the Matrix is pranking.
I give up all the time. I'm like, sometimes I'm like, this is a little bit fun. I want to find out what's going to happen. Let's reload Drudge and see what's going on now. But then other times I'm like, nah, this craziness is wearing me out. Well, I can't even do this to somebody.
We from time to time I'll do a show on Disputed Lands where it's just the news on NYSTV, where I've gone through, and I was one of those people that, like everybody else growing up, I woke up, I got my coffee, I turned on the TV, and to whatever the station was, I watched the weather, the traffic, and heard the same news that everybody else was getting across the Western Hemisphere. The same, different people saying the same thing, even though I didn't realize it at the time. And I can remember being emotional and feeling just the way you did, what you were describing, Tom, the person that I identified with in politics, thinking that these were the people that were actually trying to do something, that folks don't think that way now. I'm not, and we're past Jared's bedtime. He's yawning in the corner. If you guys can't see that, sorry for boring you, brother.
No, I'm out of Suja juice. I'm down to my last little bit of LaCroix. I can't stimulate.
Okay, well, try to hang in there for 40 more minutes if you can.
Okay,
before you go to Betty Bye. I mean, these kids got to be put to bed early so the adults can stay up and have a conversation, Tom. Isn't that the way what happened in your house?
Yeah.
I totally forgot what I was saying. Anyway, where was I? He totally threw me off. I looked down in the corner over there to see, and his mouth was like.
It was just an innocent yawn. It was just riveted.
Taking up the whole thing. I totally lost my train. Somebody help me.
Choo choo. Get back on the train.
I don't know.
That's okay.
Where I was going. Oh, I was totally riveted with it, and I was involved with being carried away by everything else that is now. And I found that I have such a serious skepticism about anything that I hear now. I think it's kind of what you were getting at too. I mean, I don't dismiss when people start talking about different things. I've seen too many weird things. I've heard too many weird things that were turned out to be true events and experienced true events in my life, that I don't dismiss anything anymore. But it's getting more difficult to weed out the weird things that I'm hearing, and I'm not dismissing them, but it's getting harder to vet them. It seems getting harder to, unless you know the person one-on-one and you can go talk to some people, the events and stuff that I see, even on alternative news, it's like, and I guess that's part of the sad part of it, but maybe it should be expected. who is the shill in the alternative media, truth media, which is why I've been working really hard to know who my friends are who are doing this, like yourselves, people that I can trust, that I can call them up if I have to and say, look, this is what I've heard today. What are your thoughts on this? Have you heard anything? What do you know about this? And I haven't had to do that. I don't think that I've done that yet with either one of you guys, but I know I can. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's like I know I can, if I need to. I can pick up the phone and I can get Jared and Tom on a conference call and say, look, this is what I've run into. This is what I've heard. It's got my full attention. What do you guys know about this? In regards to any of these topics. And I feel here's the thing. I feel like I need to have that now. Before, it was just a desire. It'd be cool to know certain people, cool to have these kind of people in my corner. I had these people locally, but now I feel like it's almost a necessity. And I was talking to, how much do I want to share? I was talking to someone, I'm not even going to use a pseudonym, who, about an upcoming show. And they were saying that and maybe you guys can say, they've got the sense that among those who are openly and actively in ministry, right? They have a platform, whatever, that people are listening to, that among these people, they feel like this is happening with them as well. I mean, do you guys get that sense that you've got to, maybe you guys always have because you're just ahead of me in that. Do you feel like the sense of needing to know that you have these people everywhere in this country that you can turn to like that because of some pending emergency? I mean, do you have that sense, or am I just...
I did for a while. I think that I've actually taken some steps back. I was so into the whole scene for a few years that I was starting to develop New World Order freak out syndrome.
Well, yeah, I went through that phase too, because this feels, I mean, it's different than that. I mean, this seems to me more, it seems like it's the wise and prudent thing to do.
Yes.
Not
yeah,
out of
I
fear.
enjoy
It's
that.
just wise and prudent.
I definitely understand. I think I understand what you're saying. Yes, I'm the same way. It's helpful to know people that you not only trust but know what they're talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So yeah, those are just assets. People like that, and if you have those people in your life, and see, the thing is, I've had a lot of people in my life too that were like that weren't known at all, but were very good at what they did or had access to, had military connections or whatever. And there were lots of conversations a lot of times privately where it's like, all right, what's happening with this? What are we hearing? There were actually rumors you remember, for instance, I guess I'm going to chase a rabbit trail for a second. I don't even know if it's valid.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay.
I remember when all of those, we started having tremors around the United States for a while. They were registering these weird, bizarre earthquakes in places that really weren't prone to earthquakes.
Yes.
It was really weird. And I remember, I happen to know people that...
One in particular that happened off the East Coast, I remember, about a little over a year ago.
Dude, I happen to know people at the time that were really, really well connected in, military stuff. They were saying that there were factions inside of special forces that were going to war with the government over what was happening and transpiring prior to the election. And that some of those tremors were caused by explosions in underground bases. And I still don't know what to do with it. I can't vet that, but I'm getting this back from, huh?
Yeah. Who could vet that?
Well, yeah, exactly. It's like I'm nothing special, but it's like all of a sudden I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, wow, that's interesting, and you start vetting and that kind of information, even though you can't vet it. I feel like I was grateful for it because I'm like, okay, at least it makes me somewhat aware of a possibility I wasn't thinking about. And this is what I do with all that information. I get a lot of sensational information. A lot of what we do is kind of crazy, but I always just put it over here. I just store it over here. And when stuff that I encounter corroborates it, it pulls it out of the files, and I'm like, okay, I can connect the dots here. This might be, and I just I corroborate it as I go, and I try to vet it, as things transpire, and the rest of it, it kind of floats around loosely.
Tom stores that information as hair.
He does. He's got a lot more storage space in his hair than I do.
I mean, look at the storage space, right, Tom?
Yeah, no, I do, and that's why I won't get a cut because I'll completely forget everything.
Samson.
Yeah. True.
Except
true story.
With a lot less athletic ability.
One of the ways like that I like one of the reasons I like having Jared to kind of bounce things off of is normally, I'll try to get some kind of confirmation, and the way that I do that, is I'll ask him about something, and then usually whatever he says, the opposite is true. So
I'm the sounding board.
No, you know what? All joking aside, there's been so many times where I've been in kind of in the middle of some kind of a decision-making process, and I'm praying about it and I'm asking people and getting advice, and I'll go to people, just like Jared. I've heard credible information from people. Sorry, I'm trying to keep my voice down. My wife told me that I'm talking too loud.
Yeah,
I've gotten credible information from people that I trust, and I don't think they were lying to me. I don't think they were trying to mislead me. I don't think any of that, and it did not come to pass. And that did not affect my faith. That did not affect that person's credibility. I don't know, what reasons, for what reasons, whatever didn't happen, and we didn't confirm it. But obviously, none of this stuff is hidden from God. He knows every single thing that's going to happen, and every single thing, that's going on right now that's hidden from all of us. And he can expose it. It's not going to be a surprise to him. So obviously, we want to stay as close to the Lord as we can, and we want to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit. There's been many times where I've gotten advice from somebody, and it didn't. The person wasn't trying to mislead me, but it just didn't click with my discernment. And to me, that was kind of like a test of faith to see, okay, are you going to trust this person? Or are you going to trust me? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I can tell you that within the last year, and, I kind of understood this in my heart anyway. It's always one of those things that's like, I've always understood this, but more so within the last year, I can see that not just in our day, but historically, there has always been people in charge who want to maintain the illusion that the masses of people live in. Historically, quickly, you can go back to keep people distracted from the reality of the things that go on around them. The Romans had the Colosseum, right, and the games as a way to distract their people from the horrendous things that were going on around them, and the things that were being done in the name of their government and whatever. But it's societies throughout have always had that, and especially more today. When you think about all the weird things, Jared, that are actually out there that we're talking about, like I was listening to Judd Burton on an interview not long ago, and I guess they're starting down there in your area, Jared. There's been recently some sightings again of Mothman.
I haven't heard that in my area, West Texas.
Yeah, down in Texas. Judd was talking about, like, there's been some sightings again of this going on. And when you talk about the disappearances, underground bases, Nephilim, Bigfoot, these spiritual things that we're talking about, these things are the reality. Because many of these things, I know they are the reality of this world we live in. But on a society level as a whole, these things are not conscious. It doesn't have anything to do with the day in and day out of the people. And anybody who has ever studied any kind of philosophy or read anything, one of the first things you'll read is Plato. And he talked about this, the perfect society. You have, the elite, the protectorate, and the vulgar, right? You have three classes, what it boils down to: the elite, who are really in control, the protectorate, to make sure that they don't get killed by the masses, and then the vulgar, or everybody else who maintains the elites' luxury lifestyle that they have of being on top. The protector is there to keep them from revolting. But there is always, as a part about this, and Gary Williams talked about this in the Seven Sacred Sciences, part of that has always been what's called, the oratory science, the ability to communicate and to talk effectively. It's part of witchcraft and everything else. You get the use of words itself is part of the means by which to control people. We see this all the time, and I think it's always been there, that there is this, and maybe some of that people don't want, it's, I think of Flax Mulder, I want to believe, on the X-Files, I want to believe. But for the most part, most people don't. They don't want to think about these things. They want to be able to get up, cook their breakfast, put their clothes on their kids, send them to school, go to a soccer game. But I've come to the conclusion a lot of that is part of the illusion. A lot of that is part of the spells, if you will. It's part of the magic that has been placed upon people. Because you think about in the history, and still today in most places, when they get up to every day, it is about solely survival, right? It's about being able to make it to the end of that day and preparing to make it through the next day, or the monsoon season, or the winter, wherever it is these people happen to be out, right? And it's about family. It's about the simple things, and it was the knowledge of these things. But anywhere where there's structure, where there's civility, or things like that, you look at the things that are in place for a society to function. And I don't buy all of it, first of all. A lot of it is there to keep people in a box, to keep people thinking in a certain direction, to keep people moving in a planned way so that they don't rise up. They don't understand what's going on around them. They don't question the things outside of the paradigm that's been placed in front of them. And they go in the direction that keeps the elite safe at the top, and the masses who are producing everything that they want, the workers, from questioning it and rising up on them.
Well, that's something that's interesting to me that goes along with what you're saying is the whole idea of a debt-based economy. There's an old saying that gold is the money of lords. No, gold is the money of kings, silver is the money of lords, bartering the money of peasants, and debt the money of slaves. And we are in an entire economy that's based, it only thrives the more that people are in debt. We're printing money out of thin air depending on who's borrowing, how many people are borrowing. Money's generated in the banks when we borrow. When we started with this fractional reserve lending system, a lot of people don't understand that the Federal Reserve itself is not a federal institution. That's a form of illusion, right? That somehow the bank that prints our money is somehow a federal entity. It's not. It's a private bank, and a private bank is going to, right? It's going to be more concerned with its shareholders than it is anybody that's that. So you look at the income tax and everything else that's been levied on us. Is we're printing money like it's going out of style, and the only way we're printing money is if we're going into debt. Essentially is what it boils down to. And this debt-based economy is 180 degrees complete opposite from any form of economy that God has ever listed in Scripture. He gave to his people.
Absolutely, yeah. There's no question.
So when you're looking at a society that its ability to thrive is based on slavery, that sets the foundation for everything you're talking about. I was driving down. I'm so tired of advertisements. I'm driving. Freeman Fly, love him or hate him, I love the guy. He's not a Christian, but that dude really opened my eyes years ago to magic in marketing. Sorcery in marketing. That dude opened my eyes to paying attention to signs and symbols and corporations and businesses, and I learned through the years that they actually have magicians, sorcerers, and stuff. They get hired to come in and teach people how to design logos, and work with marketers. There's a real truth in what you're saying as far as the spell casting. Even when you look at the dollar bill is a talisman. It is a magical talisman. That is what it is. It is the debt-based economy itself. It bears the marks of mammon on it. And it's like, one of the reasons, like, there were times when maybe I needed something. When I started opening, my eyes started opening to the issues of, like, the occult in sort of this modern secular financial institution. And I started paying attention. I started realizing, that I wondered I would see them asking the Lord to provide. I would see God operating outside the box sometimes to meet. Why didn't God just give them the money for it? And the more I started learning about money, the more I started realizing that this debt-based system, oftentimes I think God operates outside the system because God hates the system. God can meet needs without using a talisman,
Right. Right. Well, there's a couple things. Audrey echoed the sentiments of many people that come out of here, over here. She says, sometimes I wish I didn't know any of this. The scripture says with much knowledge comes great sorrow. I mean, that's what the scripture says about that. I don't know if you're hearing me or not, because you guys are kind of froze over there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. Every sign driving down the highway, and it's just telling you to consume or obey, so. I
don't know if Jared and I were talking at the same time, but anyway, so, and then we have a question, Jared. I think this might be more for you, but Tom, you can answer it too. This comes from Leslie. Is the public awareness of the Illuminist part of Alice Bailey's externalization of the hierarchy? I haven't read a whole lot of Alice Bailey's stuff, so I understand what the question is, but I'm not sure if that's
a quick answer. A quick answer would be absolutely not. No.
Okay.
I mean, we've seen a great awakening in the last 10 years, but still, I mean, the public at large, even those who are awake, I don't think are awake to that level.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you think it's kind of okay?
Yeah, I agree. The question was, are people aware of some of the things?
Here's the question. I think it's more directly linked to being part of a plan. Is the public awareness of the Illuminist part of Alice Bailey's externalization of the hierarchy? In other words, was this a plan? It's another way I think of saying was this planned by them?
I think that once again it goes back to the answer being complicated. I see multiple facets to it. I
would say maybe.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about the answer to that, and it answered my own question as well. Maybe they did have a plan, but I can tell you, based on the people that I've spoken to, and some even that I've had on the show, and from the arches, that was not planned by the adversary. The own book, what the dots I was able to connect, that was not. What are you laughing over there, Tom?
I can't tell. I can't say on air.
Why are you laughing? Did I do something?
He's probably reading.
No. It's from a text I got. I can't say what it is.
Okay. Well, when you want to join the Disputed Land show, you're welcome to come on at any time.
I'm here, Chad.
I'm here. Give me that invitation out there. Anytime you want to come on to Disputed Lands and have a serious discussion, you're welcome.
Give me the gold star. I get more gold stars than Tom today.
Yeah, I'm going to have to start trolling him harder, obviously.
Yeah, you're going to have to. Welcome to my life, man. Welcome to my life.
All I'm saying is that the things that are being exposed today, I can say for a fact that have not been planned by the adversary. Because I can tell for the fact that what the Lord has showed me, and I was able to write about in my book, they have kept hidden for 2,000 years. It's not been known. So I can't imagine they suddenly decided they wanted that to be known. And I can tell you from my own walk that it didn't come from the adversary. This was all the Lord's leading and a burden that he placed upon my heart, diving deeply into his word, fasting and prayer. So it came from the Father that they didn't want to expose. So I can say that it's probably both to answer that question. I think that it's the move of the Father and a counter move of the adversary. I think that the Father is revealing stuff to his children. People are waking up, and then the adversary has to counter move. I think it's always the Father first. because I don't think the adversary can do anything original or that's not in a response to who the Father is. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I was looking up. I was wondering. It's been a long time since I looked at Alice Bailey's externalization of the hierarchy. And I know you weren't just referencing that. I was looking it up, but I think that
it's a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So when we're talking about revelation in this respect, you're right, because you always have. I think. Okay, I don't want to equate this information to the gospel, but there's something that's very interesting to me when the gospel is preached. Nobody ever walks away the same. Either they become more callous to it and hardened to it, or there's a movement towards it where somebody begins to believe the gospel. But nobody ever walks away from the gospel unchanged. Never, right? And I kind of look at some of this revelation the same way. Either people start to become receptive to the knowledge, or they become more callous to it and they don't care. And like I said, I'm not trying to make I'm not trying to equate the gospel to this information, but this is a spiritual issue. That's what's interesting to me about it. When people encounter these topics, it's not like we just read the paper and we're like, oh, well, did you catch the Rangers game yesterday? We're talking about a spiritual war, and you really start to see who belongs where. I think it's interesting. There's something that happens when I meet somebody and, they don't know that I'm crazy and into all this weird stuff. And we start having a conversation and they bring up something interesting. And I'm like, I got some thoughts about that. And, we start talking about it and then their eyes start to light, they get huge and they're like, oh, I see that. I've never thought about that. They get excited. There are other people that just instantly start to get mad and frustrated that we're having this conversation. They don't want to talk about it. To me, it's just it's interesting to watch the way people polarize, to see who the Lord's working on and who he's not. Jesus warned us, we're always going to have chaff and wheat together, always be careful. I mean, it's almost like some of these issues you're seeing further polarization of two factions of people, God's people, and Satan's people almost, it's just like, I don't know. I kind of just, it becomes really interesting to watch how people react to spiritual information.
Well, here's the thing, that where the reality sets in is that each one of us, we got to have those conversations. I think they got to come up. I think we got to be willing to jump in, even with what a little information that people have. I think that's what's actually taking place, because of the information. I truly believe it's being hidden. Actually, how many people are tuning into shows like Through the Black? Like, I kind of made fun of you, earlier that it's 4 people when it's probably really like 15. I don't think you guys are getting all the numbers showing up that are actually tuning in and watching shows on yours, on YouTube, like yours, or NYSTV's platform, is whatever they may be. I think those numbers are being hidden. I think more people are watching those kind of shows now today than they are watching regular television shows. Now, I could be wrong, but I think we're starting to see, you could probably get pretty close to real numbers about how many people the Matrix still has, if we could know those actual numbers, because I think they're being hidden. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's pretty evident listening to all of the YouTube creators that tend to watch their numbers change in the analytics.
Because I think about the number of people that I've talked about or had conversations with, and I don't get out a whole lot because I work nights. So I don't have a whole lot of interaction with people unless it's for personal business outside of here of my home, or a sphere where I do ministry through the internet, right? But the conversations that I have, I've overheard and been a part of, I do hear people talking about some of these off the wall topics. And it's like, well, who did they listen to if nobody's if like SGT report or whatever, I'm just throwing one that's been out there for a while now, he's got like 60,000 subscribers, which is okay. That's pretty good for a YouTube channel. But when you think of, in the light of 300 million people that are supposedly, resident within the United States, it's like, well, is he really making an impact? But when I think about the number of conversations, this is a point I'm trying to get to. when I think about the number of conversations I've had to, and I don't interact with the public as much as I used to unless they're business, and the conversations have come up, I've got to believe that there's more people out there who are listening to the alternative news than what's being reported.
Yeah, I would agree.
It has to be, because there's too many people who are aware of it for the numbers that I see on the channels that I've looked around. If that's only 60,000 people, that how weird is it that the 5 people that I interacted with in this month outside of for business, that stuff like this had come up with.
But that's really one of the interesting things about being in the digital age. You know, I was listening to Jordan Peterson the other day because I find him interesting, even though I think, anyway, some of what, you know, when he starts teaching scripture, it starts to drive me crazy. But he does have some interesting points of view. Do you know who I'm talking about when I refer to Jordan Peterson? Have you seen some of his stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, he was talking about how people are figuring out that the masses are far more interested and capable of handling in-depth conversations than they previously thought. And the only way he thinks we're in a bigger, this makes a lot of sense. I'm not as articulate about it, but essentially that we're living in an era where the dissemination of information is reaching a point of, advancement, not dissimilar to what happened when the printing press was created. You know, there was the amount of material that was able to make it into the hands of people everywhere drastically increased exponentially with the creation of the printing press. But the difference is now we're able to send long form conversations at the touch of a button, so you can have 3 and 4 hour conversations that are far different from that of a newspaper or magazine, that allow people to listen to the thoughts of a man as he rationalizes, engages in, debate, introspection, dialectic, the whole 9 yards. And so with the, invention of the podcast where everybody can have one, people like this is a perfect example. We've had a 2-hour conversation that would never have been a book, never would have made it into a magazine, never would have been printed anywhere. And thousands of people, tens of thousands of people have access to it. And they're listening to us reason and use rationale as we converse back and forth over serious topics, and people are interested in these topics. This is a relatively new advancement in the age of digital technology, people being able to tune into these conversations. This has not been around very long. And that is one of the reasons why so many people are getting interested, is because the information is now being available, and it's being made available and packaged in such a way that never before in history has it ever been available.
Absolutely.
I'm amazed that as many people are even in the chat room right now as we're here talking. I'm just kind of like, wow, I don't know, 20 years ago, everybody would have been watching TV, right?
Absolutely.
So I don't know. It blows me away. I saw a guy wearing a shirt. It was a little over a year ago, and I haven't forgot it. It was just one of those simple text shirts. And the only thing on it, it said, podcasting is the new television. And I think it's true. I mean,
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. There was a question from one of our regular listeners, and you guys, Ali Shiba asked the question, if there's time, can you guys discuss a little bit about the pedophilia normalization agenda, NAMBLA and such, that's growing these days? How pedophilia is now classified as natural sexual orientation, that pedo pervs are born that way and should not have to live in the shame. Can you guys please talk a little bit about that? Well, Ali, I can only give you my thoughts on this. First of all, there have always been these kind of people throughout history. It's not since there's been man and woman, there has been the perversion of God's creation and what he has intended for man. So that's number one. The normalization of it always has to do first. Here's my thoughts on that. A failure of God's people to be the people that he's called them to be in whatever society they are living in. These people are not allowed to be outspoken, talk about without having any kind of shame, unless there's first been a falling away among God's children. If we were being the diligent people in bringing up and raising up our families, in discipling and doing those things that the scripture has told us to do, these things are never allowed to take root. It's the failure of God's people first in these things. Now, on the flip side of that is the whole earth lies in the wicked one, as the scripture says. The kingdom of the power of the kingdom of the air, the adversary, has always had his guy in governmental societies. They're not God's kingdom. They don't operate by God's kingdom. That was rejected. But what I'm saying is, it can't, their agenda, the governmental agenda, the adversary's agenda, I believe, is always seriously hindered by God's people operating in the manner that they should be. That his agenda that he would have is not able to go forward when God's children are being obedient. These people aren't allowed to have public space. They aren't allowed to have TED Talks. They aren't allowed to do these things. Now, see, here's the other dichotomy, and this goes along with what Jared was just saying. Just as we have the opportunity to discuss and have this discussion here too, you have people who have the ability, because of the internet, to operate and discuss things in areas that aren't governed by perhaps those laws. You can perhaps you live in a town and a state where that is not legal to talk about, but that doesn't stop people from reaching now those people who are in your town and in your state. All they have to do is go someplace else where there's no law against it or for it. They could talk there, and that's broadcast into where you are. And people are emboldened by this, saying, that they can now speak on. I mean, it's a little by little increment. So I think there's, again, all these topics are complicated, but at first I think it has to result from God's people. There's always somebody has got to stand up. This, and this is kind of related, not directly, but it's kind of related. I was just thinking about, and I've been thinking about a lot, Tom, because you did the broadcast, your daughter, Evangeline. Man, if we had voices like hers, in hearts like hers, and passions like hers in our young adult, I'm so encouraged by that. If we had 20 Evangelines, within doing what she's doing, I mean, I look at the impact she's already had on the community that knows Tom, and the people that have sent her encouraging words that I can see, or have lifted up and shared, what she's doing. And I think, man, if we could have 20 of those, what kind of impact that could have on a place, on an area. And that's okay, Jared. We're going to wrap it up here in about 5 minutes.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm going strong, bro.
I know we're way past pajama times and sipping nighttime drink and Betty Bye. We're way past that. I understand, brother. But what I'm saying is, if we had those kind of people, the people who are emboldened, because they're always the quieter ones, the ones who have faith, who they call the silent majority, will stand behind those kind of voices. They will stand behind those kind of people, and they aren't allowed to have, the people who are promoting this stuff aren't allowed to have a platform and accept that as normal. Would you agree? Or what are your thoughts?
I want to speak to a little bit of that. I remember about 20 years ago, I used to watch this show called The Ellen Show, and it was a sitcom with this comedian named Ellen DeGeneres.
Yep.
And there was a very famous show about her coming out on the show.
The movie, that show was tanking, by the way, which led to that episode, which increased the numbers. That nobody liked it.
Well, no, yeah, and the show got canceled. The show got canceled because she was rejected. And the amazing thing now is, this has slowly been going on for a long time. And for anybody, I feel like we always got to put this disclaimer out there that we don't hate homosexuals. We love them. And we,
I agree with that statement. I don't either.
Yeah.
I have people I love and know who are it, but this is a sin that attacks creation directly and is being.
I feel like I always got to put that disclaimer out there. But how did this happen? Because when I was in high school, this was a shameful thing. You know, it wasn't a compliment to be called gay. It was an insult. Okay.
Yep.
And not, you know, and I'm not endorsing insulting anybody or calling anybody names or anything like that, but that's what went on. So we went from something that was very shameful to something that was celebrated and lifted up. And the way that we got there was because of the media, whether it be through TVs, movies,
on nights like tonight. It's just kind of
Yeah.
jammed right in there together.
Now I got it.
Hey, we're actually past the cutoff time, so I don't want to keep you guys if you feel like they need to go. This kind of remind me. Do I still hold the record on Through the Black?
I think
for the longest
so.
show?
Yeah, I think so. 3 hours and something.
I can feel better now.
You still hold the record. It's hard for me to work up enough courage to try to beat the record. You know.
Well, that's good. I would be lighting up your phone. Like,
and then I'd have to. Then you and I would have to spend like 4 hours together. And goodness,
you'll be having to block me.
Oh my goodness. Yeah,
I'd enlist Tom to help me. I'd enlist Tom to help me, but it would fail.
There's just, Chad, there's too much to talk about out there.
Yeah. Well, I still want to bring you guys back on again because there's other topics that you guys have talked about on Through the Black that I wanted to get a chance to talk about, like some of your Nephilim episodes or your Bigfoot episodes, or, some of these other conversations like that you've had with Derek Gilbert or whatever, man. So we'll have to talk. I'll have to go back and watch some of those shows, and then I can join the conversation and have you guys on to talk about it. So
it'd probably be better to plan in the future to drop the dead weight, just do a me and you kind of thing, So
don't listen to him, Tom. You've been a valuable source of input as always, man.
Nah, dude.
If anything,
I'll tell you what, I support his free speech because he supports mine.
Yeah, I love you both. Okay, so we'll cut off the show here real soon because it's generally 2 hours. Most people have stopped listening by now. So here's what's going on. Take on the World. The last time I heard, just a couple days ago, there was only 20 tickets left. There might not even be that now. So you're losing chances at your opportunity to get a ticket every second of the day. There may not be any left as far as I know right now. Go to the Take on the World 18 website, call Chris, see if there's a ticket. Do it tomorrow when you get up first thing. Don't call him right now. It's too late. He's on Eastern Standard Time. So do it in the morning. The second thing I wanted to say, next week, I haven't ever done this on my show. I'm actually announcing a week ahead of time who the guest is going to be. Next week is going to be a roundtable discussion with myself, John Powders, and Dr. Michael Lake. Dr. Michael Lake will be on Disputed Lands. I am so stoked about this. Have you guys talked to him yet?
Michael Lake?
Not on the radio.
No, not on a show. Have you guys spoken to him in person?
Yeah, I've talked to him in person before.
Yeah.
He probably wouldn't remember me, but I
thought maybe I had what up on you guys because I've seen you have some guests on there on your show Through the Black. I'm like, man, I want to talk to them. I want to get them on this show. So I thought maybe I had one up on you. Again, get to talk to Michael Lake first. But you already beat me. Anyway, so next week it's going to be a roundtable. Should be a good show. I really want to thank you guys for coming on. We'll have to do this again. Let's not wait a year to do it. Maybe just a few months. And
Tom, what are your two presentations you're talking about? I forgot what you told me today. I was curious what you.
I'm going to talk about the new film, and then the other one's up for. I got to get these movies out before I nail anything down, and I don't want to say for sure because everything is up for debate until I actually show up and start talking. So, but I do plan on talking a lot about the film This Is a War in my presentation and what it's about and going, even deeper than that. But that's always up for,
Well, I'll just give my 2 cents for the times that I've heard Tom speak. It doesn't matter. He can come there without having anything written down. You're going to come back there knowing that you heard something really special, that there was not going to be another opportunity like that one in the environment that it is, to hear the message that God is going to deliver through Brother Tom. Jared's still got to figure out what he's talking about.
Yeah, I'll be talking about the movie This Is a War a lot. I'm gonna bring my own presentation on the movie. Tom and I'll just have a battle off.
All right. All right.
Maybe we'll just stand up and do all the presentations together.
Okay. Okay. Cool. All right.
I'm just joking. I'm gonna talk about missing kids statistics. I'm gonna talk about ritual sacrifice in one, and then I'll be on the Cosmos stage for the other one. I'm gonna.
I don't know if everybody else saw me. I was flashing. Then signs. You're gonna talk about that? Did I lose you, Jared? You left.
Is he there?
No, I think he said I'm done.
He's just he does this to me all the time. He's just ignoring me.
He's just like he's done. Either he froze or he says I'm done and he left. He's still there. I think he's frozen. Tom, it's going to be real good, man. Go ahead.
Frozen too.
No, you're not.
Am I moving?
No, you're frozen. Can you show everybody real quick? We're going to real quick before we sign off. Can you show everybody what I saw when you first logged on here? and when we had all the episodes that didn't show up live on TV, real quick before, can you show everybody what I saw? Jared, there he goes. Dude, what am I? You're gonna make people think that I'm an idiot. All right, that's fine. That's fine. Tom, I love you, bro. This has been Disputed Lands on NYSTV. We're out of here. Thanks for joining us.
Get right, get insight, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey. Observe, interpret, and apply. Detoxify from demon doctrines, get edified. Fight the good fight, stop getting lied to. The kingdom of heaven is inside you.
Holy Spirit guide you.
Mortify your flesh by the scripture magnified. Applied what's amplified, dead corpse gets electrified. Dry bones get flesh, yelling the battle cry. To die is gain, to live is Christ. Oh yeah, you know that's right. We in this together, grab somebody's hand and hold tight. Study God's word until the world blurs. Fight evil with God's word as the world burns. Holding steadfast as it all crashes and burns. Cause whom devils disturb are preserved by God's word. That's word. Get right, get insight, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey. Get right, get inside, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting water, never again thirsty. To disputed lands, take a journey. Get right, get inside, get hungry, word of God appetite. Everlasting